If you are anything like me, I'm sure you have a number of things you've been planning to do, but never got around to doing them. For me, it was these solar panels that I bought 7 months ago to get ahead of the tariffs. I put them away and worked on more pressing issues. So you can imagine my surprise this month when my electric bill went up $40. I know, my friends tell me I should shut up. But then I started hearing warnings on the news to expect electric costs to rise almost 60%. It was time to break out those solar panels, build a stand to support them, and fight the power company. I ran to YouTube for research and highly recommend Will Prouse to show you how to create your solar setup. And then I found a platform from City Prepper that I could modify for my needs. It was on. I headed to the big box store with the idea that I would get 2x4s for the bottom of the platform and use 2x2 furring strips for the solar panel support to reduce the weight of the frame. The frame was going to be outside, so the wood didn't need to be pretty, and I went with a rougher grade of treated wood to cut cost. I was lucky and found 2 extra 2x2s in the 70% off bin. I also bought hinges and a sturdy handle to help with lifting the platform once it was built. And finally, I needed 4 4-inch machine screws and bolts for the wheels and panel supports. The whole thing cost me $55. My first step was to lay out the wood so I could begin to work. I then looked around for the perfect spot that would get the most sun during the day and rigged a temporary panel setup to see how fast the panels could charge in that location. At the height of the day, the 400-watt panels were giving 365 watts, so this was the best spot. I moved them out of the way to keep charging and began building the frame. Since the platform was going to be 8 feet long, I simply needed to lay one of the panels on top to measure the inside width. Once that was done, I only needed to mark and cut the 2 inside widths. I once again used one of the panels to make certain my measurements were correct. So far, so good. Screwing the bottom of the platform together took next to no time. What slowed me down was the usual pilot holes to prevent splitting, and on to a middle section to provide stability. Things were moving right along. With the bottom of the platform done, I was now ready to repeat the process using the 2x2s that would actually hold the panels. The measurements were the same, so I simply laid them on top of the bottom frame and began the process of screwing the top together. I used 2.5-inch trim screws because the top wood was so narrow. Now that the top and bottom of the frame were done, I laid out where I wanted the hinges to go and began marking screw hole placement. I decided on 3 hinges for stability because the length was 8 feet, and I did light pilot holes to get the screws started because they were small. And then repeated the process for what would be the inside of the hinges. In no time, I was able to test the up and down movement of the hinges. I decided to put on 6-inch wheels I already had as the next step, so I wouldn't have a lot in my way later on. It was simple enough to drill a hole and then run one of the 4-inch screws through to attach them. However, I soon discovered that 6 inches helped, but was not enough to move the frame with ease. Something to work on later. That done, I was now ready to add the handle that would help me lift and move the bottom frame easily. I wanted the supports for the panel frame to be able to move so I could adjust the angle of the panels. So I drilled holes in the support. And then drilled into the back of the top frame. So when I wanted the frame to lay flat, I could store the supports out of the way. The final step in the process was to attach a 1x4 I got off the bargain bin to the edge of the bottom frame to support the panels. I put in lots of screws to make sure there was plenty of support for the 4 panels. I put the panels on the frame and everything seemed to fit like I wanted. I was now ready to test the concept. And what do you know? The support legs swung back and forth, allowing me to change the angle to where I wanted, and nicely supported the panels. And here is a 360-degree view of the platform. I have to come back and put the bifacial panels together to get the full benefit of dual charging, and add clamps to tie the panels to the frame. But I'm pleased. Overnight, I checked for bigger wheels, and my all standby Harbor Freight came to the rescue. I was able to get 2 10-inch wheels for what the big box store wanted to charge me for 1. I took off the old wheels and in a flash put on the 10-inch one. and it became a lot easier to move the frame. I even came back and added a connector to the leg supports that made it easier to swing them down or store them away, because now when I moved one, the second one would also be in place. The final touch was to simply cut off the excess, and I was done. I gave it a try on a partially cloudy day and was able to charge the 2,000-watt power station up to 74%. I can now charge the power stations or the 100 amp hour lithium ion phosphate batteries for free and use them to supplement my electric power. Take that, electric power company. See you next time.